The strange Christmas tree. Once upon a time, there was a Christmas tree that had been planted by a pixie. But before the tree had grown more than an inch or two high, the pixie had gone away, so the tree grew in the wood all by itself and didn't even know that it was a Christmas tree, for it had never been used at Christmas time at all. But one Christmas, a woodman came by and saw the tree, which had now grown into a big, fine one. The man stopped and took his spade from his shoulder. I could dig that tree up and sell it for a Christmas tree, he thought. It would fetch a few pounds at least. I'll take it to market tomorrow. So he dug it up, put it in a grey pot, and staggered to market with it. Into the market came a mother and her 3 children. They saw the tree, and the children shouted in delight, "Mother, buy this tree, it's the biggest and best one here." So the mother bought the tree, and the woodman carried it home for her. The tree was astonished. What in the world was happening to it? It knew the fairy folk very well indeed, for it had lived with them for years, and knew their gentle ways and little high voices. But this world was something quite different. The people were big and tall, not like the fairy folk, and how strange, they took trees into their houses and stood them there. The Christmas tree didn't know about Christmas time. It stood in a corner of a big room in its pot, wondering what would happen next. The children's mother came in with boxes of toys and ornaments and candles. Soon she had hung dozens of them on the tree, and it began to sparkle and shine as if it were a magic thing. It caught sight of itself in the mirror, and how astonished it was. "I'm beautiful," said the tree. "I glitter and shine. I am hung with the most beautiful things. Oh, I like living in this land, and being dressed up like this. I shall have a lovely time here." Now the children's mother had told them they must not even peep into the room where she had put the lovely Christmas tree. But alas, they were disobedient children, and they meant to see the tree as soon as their mother had gone out. So that night they all 3 slipped into the room to see the tree. "It looks nice," said Doris. "It's not so big as the one last year," said George. "It hasn't even got toys on," said Kenneth. "There's something I mean to get anyway," said Doris, pointing to a box of crackers. "So don't you ask for that, boys." "Don't be mean, Doris," said George. "You got the crackers last year. It's my turn." "Well, I'm going to have the soldiers," said Kenneth, and he took hold of a box of them. "There's only one box this year, George, and as I'm the oldest, I'm going to have them. See?" "Don't be so mean and horrid," said George. "Look, look," said Doris suddenly. "Here's a box of chocolates. Shall we undo the lid and take some? Nobody will know." Now, wasn't that a horrid and mean thing to do? Children who do things like that don't deserve a lovely Christmas tree, and that's just what the tree thought. But it stood there, quite still and silent, listening and looking. The children took the chocolates, but Doris had the biggest one, so they began to quarrel again. George shoved Doris, and then Doris pushed Kenneth, and soon they were all fighting. The tree had never seen such behaviour before. The children bumped against the tree and knocked off a lovely pink glass ornament. It fell to the floor and broke. "Silly tree," said Doris rudely. "Why can't you hold things properly? Why aren't you as big as last year's tree? You're not half so pretty." "Christmas trees are babyish things," said Kenneth. "I vote we ask for a bran tub next year." "Yeah, who wants a silly old tree now?" said George. "We're getting too big." Then a noise was heard in the hall outside, and the children fled, for it was their mother coming home. The tree was left alone, sad and angry. What dreadful children! How it hated staying in their house. But where could it go? It did not know its way back to the wood. And then the tree saw 4 little faces pressed against the window looking in, and heard whispering voices. It was the children of the poor woman down the lane. They had never had a Christmas tree in their lives, and nobody ever gave them Christmas presents, not even their mother, who was far too poor to give them even an orange each. So the children had come to look at the Christmas tree in the big house. "It's the most beautiful thing in the world," said Ida. "If only I could see all its candles alight and shining, I would always be happy when I remembered it," said Lucy. "Wouldn't Mother love that box of chocolates?" said Harry. "I wouldn't want any of those toys for myself," said Fred. "I'd just be happy cutting them off the tree and giving them to Mother. And to you 3 others." The tree listened in surprise and delight. What different children these were, if only it was their home. Then there came the noise of an opening door, and the tree heard George's angry voice. "There are some children peeping in our windows at our Christmas tree. Go away, you bad, naughty children. You're not to look at our tree." The 4 children ran off at once, afraid. The tree felt angrier than ever. It shivered from top to toe at the thought of that horrid, unkind little boy. It stood there, wishing and wishing it could leave the house. Then suddenly it remembered some magic it had learnt from the fairy folk, and it murmured the words to itself. Its roots loosened in the pot. One big one put himself outside, and then another and another. And do you know, in a few moments that strange Christmas tree was walking on its roots around the room. How strange it looked! The door was open, and the tree went out. The front door was shut, but the garden door was open for the cat to come in. The tree walked out of it just as the cat came in. The cat gave a scared mew and fled outside again. It wasn't used to trees walking out of a house. The tree walked down the path and out of the gate. It saw the 4 children away in the distance, running to their home in the moonlight. Slowly and softly the Christmas tree followed them, but when it got to their house, the door was shut. The tree didn't mind at all. It preferred to wait in the garden because its roots liked the feel of the earth. There was no front garden, but there was a small one at the back, so the tree walked round and stood there in the middle. It squeezed its roots into the soil and held itself there firmly, a marvellous sight with all of its beautiful toys and ornaments and candles. Then it called to the fairy folk, and they came in wonder. "Light my candles for me," rustled the tree, "and then knock on the children's window." So the little folk lit all the candles and then rapped loudly on the children's window. Harry pulled back the curtain, and there was the tree standing in the little back garden, lit from top to toe, shining softly and beautifully, sparkling and glittering in a wonderful way. "Look!" shouted Harry. "Look!" And all the other children crowded to the window, with their mother behind them. "A Christmas tree for us in our very own garden!" shouted Lucy. "Oh, it's like the one we saw in the big house." Harry ran out and shouted to the others in surprise. "It's growing in the ground! It's really growing! It must be magic!" Everyone crowded round it. The tree was very happy and glowed brightly. The children gently touched the toys. Harry cut off the box of chocolates and gave it to his mother. And then Fred cut off the toys and pressed them into everybody's hands. He didn't want any for himself. He was just so pleased to be able to give them to those he loved. But Harry made him have the box of soldiers and the red train. Then they all went indoors out of the cold and left the Christmas tree by itself, still with its candles burning brightly. And that night the fairy folk took it back to its old place in the wood, where it grows to this day, remembering every Christmas time how it once wore candles and ornaments and toys. As for Doris and George and Kenneth, what do you suppose they thought when they went to have their Christmas tree and found it was gone? Only the big pot was left and nothing else at all. How they cried, how they sobbed, but I can't help being glad that the tree walked off to the children down the lane.